confidence men, pickpockets, prostitutes, sport of every kind and variety. Suddenly this town of 15,000 people swells up to 50,000. For a moment, Reno, this tiny town, is the center of America.
It was estimated that over 1 million words a day were generated by the 2,000 reporters in town. By reading the cartoons of the day, it was vividly clear that racism was the fabric of this fight. Professor of Afro-American Studies, Dr. William H. Wiggins, Jr.
The cartoons were important because what they're doing is they're reflecting the attitudes of the country at that time. The New York Times ran a cartoon in which the two men are in the ring. Johnson is the quintessential ape-like figure. He's black, he has a bullet head, the arms are below the knees, has this massive chest that comes into this small waistline and so forth. On the other hand, Jeffries, who's just the opposite, just looks like a matinee idol. You got all these American flags that are being waved out here by little old ladies. So you can see very clearly Johnson as the outsider. Jeffries is representing the American way.
The odds on the fight actually favored the old champion to beat the young champion in his prime. That's how much white fans wanted Jeffries to win. Philip Earle.
Those who were able to make judgments about fighters put their money on Jack Johnson. You know, I saw one guy, and he said that he went down to the Railroad Depot when Johnson came in, and he said, "That's the meanest nigger I ever saw." And he said, so I went down and put all my money on that nigger.
Reporters remembered the order with which the drunken mob, 15,000 to 20,000 strong, moved towards the stadium on the outskirts of Reno and checked their firearms at the gate. How they poured through the 4 tunnel-like entrances into the huge 8-sided arena. How a brass band climbed into the ring and played All Coons Look Alike to Me and other patriotic selections. It was a picture of boisterous American innocence, confident that Jeffries would triumph in the racial confrontation. From Papa Jack, by Randy Roberts.
But the legs and reflexes of this once great fighter were no more. Jeffries was butchered by the sneering Galveston giant. Scheduled for 45 rounds, Johnson ended it in 15. Etta Moten Barnett remembers the day.
We were in Palestine, Texas, and Papa had this Sunday school picnic for the time when Jack Johnson was going to fight. The young boys from Western Union would come out there on a bicycle and bring the round. When they did come and said that Jack Johnson had knocked out Jeffries, the thing broke loose with joy, with joy. The next day in Galveston, Texas, Jack Johnson's sister had also knocked out a white man because he had insisted that she get off of the sidewalk when he was coming, and she did not care to do this. She knocked him out. That was my memory, great memory of the Jack Johnson fight.
Earl Gustke.
President Theodore Roosevelt, the night of the fight, was at Sagamore Hill, New York, his vacation home, and he kept telephoning the local telegraph office, asking for a result of the fight. And when he finally got it, according to the Western Union operator at the telegraph office, the president uttered an explosive expletive and hung up the phone. But that pretty much characterized white America's reaction to a black man beating a beloved white champion.
Hope had lived in thousands of breasts until the last minute, and then their idol crumbled, and this black man stood above them, peerless. They could not help but admire him, and there was little animosity shown toward him. For the most part, the people were silent, readjusting things in their minds. Associated Press.
As word of the outcome swept America, race rioting broke out in every major city. As blacks celebrated, whites would attack them. There were 5,000 cases of disorderly conduct. Hundreds were injured. 19 were killed. Randy Roberts.
There's been two events in American history that have precipitated widespread racial violence. One of the events was the assassination of Martin Luther King. The other event was the Jack Johnson-Jim Jeffries fight.
Bert Sugar.
And Congress passed a law that said that there would be no interstate commercing or trafficking of the fight films because they did not want to further aggravate the potential riots. And in fact, stayed in effect from 1910 to the mid-30s.
A black correspondent named William Pickens wrote, "It was better for Johnson to win and a few blacks be killed in body than for Johnson to lose and all the blacks be killed in spirit."
For blacks, this was the greatest achievement, provided the greatest hope since the Emancipation Proclamation, a historic milestone on the road toward equality.
Amazing grace, how sweet it sounds. Jack Johnson knocked Jim Jeffries down. Jim Jeffries jumped up and hit Jack in the chin, and then Lord, Jack knocked him down again. The Yankees hold the play. The white man pulls the trigger. But it makes no difference what the white men say. The world champion's still a nigger. This is what the black community felt, is yes, the power is in the hands of the white, but it doesn't make a difference. That on this one day, for this one moment, the world champion's a black man, and they can't take this away from us.
That Glory Road remained a forked road long after the rioting and the shouting had stopped. Jim Jeffries went back to his farm, graciously acknowledging that on his very best day, he could never have beaten the champion. But Jack Johnson, hounded by trumped-up legal charges, fled the law and eventually the country. And the aftermath of Johnson-Jeffries was so traumatic that no black heavyweight was again permitted to challenge for the crown for another 27 years. By that time, Joe Louis had become, in effect, a great black hope. But on one memorable occasion at Yankee Stadium, and then afterward forevermore, he was the red, white, and blue hope.
In this corner, Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling.
The time is 1936. Hitler is in Germany. The Depression is in the United States. It is the worst of times. Into the setting step two of the unlikeliest characters ever seen in sport.
Joe Louis and Max Schmeling would meet twice in the ring. With the rise of Hitler in Germany sending the world hurtling toward another great war, their second fight was seen in 1938 as a direct challenge to the Nazi theory of a superior Aryan race. Joe Louis's son, Joe Louis Barrow, Jr.
When I talked to my father about it, he always got very serious about that fight. Because in addition to it being a heavyweight championship bout, it was freedom against the Aryan race. It was democracy pitted against Hitler's fascism. And so it took on tremendous overtones.
A former heavyweight champion, Max Schmeling represented the strength, the ability, and the hopes of the German people. Professor of German Studies, David Bathrick.
Schmeling was already kind of symbol for a lot of things much earlier than this fight. I mean, he became a very successful boxer in the 1920s and the so-called Weimar period, and at that point became a kind of icon for a lot of artists and a lot of sort of cultural commentators.
Ingrid Jive Rothbard remembers growing up in Berlin during that time.
Schmeling was very well known to all of us, even as children. He was one of those glamorous sports figures that we heard about. And I knew about the fight because we were told about the brown bomber, which was Louis. He was called Der Braune Bomber.